Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Jerry Maniak here today on a lovely late February day here. Hey, we're going to get going here in just a little bit. Just maybe hold on, hang tight here about maybe 30, 40 seconds. Just letting some more people get logged in here, and then we'll start today's call. For those of you who are logging in, we're going to get the call going here in just a little bit. Probably about another 15, 20 seconds or so, and we'll get the call rolling here. Thanks, guys. All right, we'll get things rocking and rolling. Good morning, everybody. Today, your host is Jerry Maniak. As a custom here, I come on here once a month and we go over the calls. So I got some good stuff for you. Excuse me. By the way, gosh, it's been lovely. I hope it has been for everybody else too as well. We were up here in Minnesota. We were about 55 degrees. So, a week ago it was negative 20 here. So we're coming into spring. I hope everybody's excited. If you live in the deep south, you're thinking, "Gosh, all my great weather's almost over." So you guys love the winter, but we're excited to get into the spring. I had a great weekend there, but kind of got a lot of things for you. Kind of a little tidbit here. Warren Buffett, everybody knows this guy here. He had some kind of an interesting note. He had some instructions in his will. I thought this was an interesting point to what to do with his money for his wife after he passed away. And if you think about it, if you're making some guesses, you'd probably say, well, probably Berkshire Hathaway, and that'd be a really good guess. Actually, what he had said to do with his money was to use Vanguard index funds. So I just think that that's kind of an interesting point when you have one of the smartest investing guys in the entire world. He's talking about where you should put your money. And he says, using index funds, which is something that we talk about all the time because it's so costly and it's almost impossible out there to beat the market. So something that's low cost, consistent, and the father of investing. I just think that's solid, rock solid information, and just really an interesting point. And kind of another point here was the Journal of Financial Planning. This is interesting. It says retirees with at least 1 year cash reserves are significantly less likely to run out of money than people who live off their investments. If you think about that, why is that? They won't. No panic, right? I think that that's one thing. No panic. You don't have to. When you have those cash reserves, and you could look at that. I mean, that's kind of the same point on why we use FIAs. You look. If you don't have that, then there's panic where you're freaking out. Oh gosh, the market's going down here. So now there's some concern that am I going to have enough money? And that's when people make bad decisions. Sell when the market's low, which is the complete opposite of what we talk about. You want to sell high, buy low. And you look out throughout history and the emotional response out there. 2008, we had record flows coming out of the market, and then when things are getting high, your record flows in, which is completely opposite of buy low, sell high. So having the that cash on the sideline, like they're talking about here, allows people not to panic. So they're not doing those things. They're not making those poor emotional decisions. And in fact, I think that that's we could probably look at that when it comes to fixed index annuities too as well. That allows clients when we set up our plans, so that they're good in all markets, right? Markets up, it's good. It's a sound plan. Markets down, and we promise things and we guarantee people things that we can guarantee. I think and we've talked about this on other calls too as well, where we could have a money manager and say, hey, my money manager is gonna make things so I don't lose as much on the downside, but I'm not going to make quite as much on the upside. And really, in theory, it sounds good, but it doesn't really play well with clients anyway. So, this was I just thought was an interesting point that they had said 1 year cash reserves. Those people significantly are less likely. There's a number of other reasons too, I'm sure, to run out of money than people that just live solely off their investments. So, kind of the point I want to get into is so if we look at relationships, with an advisor and their client, it's a little bit like dating, and we use that analogy a lot because they're both emotional relationships that are put together, and a lot of times the same ways that there's connection when you're connecting with a prospect or your client, a lot of the same connections and things coexist and are similar when it comes to dating or being in a relationship too. And so there was a study done, and they're looking at the number one thing that builds attraction between two people or builds connection there. And I think the obvious one that kind of comes first is attractiveness. So they actually said it was sexual attraction, but really what that is that looks. That's looks, and that's obvious. That's an obvious one, and that's kind of one of the first things. But after that's gone, you have the attractiveness. There's certainly lots of good-looking people. Doesn't matter. Hey, for you guys, you're excited. All you good-looking advisors, you got it taken care of. You're good-looking, right? No, I'm just playing with you. But beyond that, even in relationships too, as well, that only goes so far. But that's kind of the first thing. So I guess what you could say is, when you meet people for the first time, don't look like a slob, right? You want to be put together. But beyond that, after the first minute, there's a few other things that come into play that are mighty important when it comes to be able to build a relationship and being likable. And I think that these points are really important because they really do make a difference. I've found there's so many great advisors that are out there that are very good when it comes to they understand numbers. They're really probably some of the better financial advisors that are out there. They really understand the business, but they lack some of the personal skills that on the same token, I've had guys that maybe aren't even the greatest of financial advisors in terms of math and strategy and things like that, but they're really, really good with people. They're really good at building trust. They're really good at at some of those different items. And I see that those guys a lot of times have more success because they understand that people work with people that they like. And that's a very important to the component. So back to the point here, after, every minute after that, here's some of the other things. So one of the points was laugh when they laughed. And this is incredibly important here. So if you think about if you're in a meeting and a client says something that they think is funny and they start laughing, and we sit there across the table with a stone face, that becomes really awkward pretty quickly, right? And so that's one of the things when we do tape reviews that we're talking about, making sure that, hey, when they make a joke or they're laughing, that we laugh along with them to help people feel comfortable, right? I mean, because that's just about that's that relational thing that can make a conversation, with someone become toxic and a problem right away, because then all of a sudden they're feeling really weird about it and saying, yeah, we just don't vibe, our personalities. That's where you hear that type of stuff, honestly, in dating, or even in they leave out of the meeting and they're saying, yeah, we just didn't really click. It's because it felt awkward, and we want prospects to feel comfortable with us. So laughing when they laughed, I think that's one of the points here I think that absolutely applies in the financial advisor world with us, which is just kind of relationship building. One of the next ones was asked questions versus talked. Now, who does that sound like? What do we train in the 5Q system? It's ask questions. It's built into everything that we do. It's built into our scripts, and that's so we're learning about them, and then they're telling us, right? So a lot of times it's the asking questions is in the motivational interviewing process of things, where we want to have clients tell us, they're going to believe what they tell us, not what we tell them. And then, just in dating too as well, it's getting to know people. It's knowing, it kind of comes down to, it's us knowing them. What do they really believe, instead of us feeling like we're selling them? And you look with a lot of non-5Q trained advisors or people that haven't figured this out, what do? They want to talk. So throughout the whole meeting, they're talking, telling, selling, and preaching, selling, telling, and preaching. And typically, when people are doing that, why is it that they're doing it? Could be nervousness. Most likely not. I think why exactly why most people why they do it is they want to get they want to impress upon the client how intelligent they are, why they're so great, why you need to work with me. But what research is actually showing is that's a death nail when it comes to building relationships. Especially nowadays when you look at there's so much information that's out there. Anybody can feel like there's an expert. So we're much better positioned, just like in relationships, asking questions, following the 5Q system. That's what we have and what we've built in there. And if you have trouble asking questions, the great thing is that's why we have the scripts in there to help align things and make it easier for you to be able to ask questions. So I think that that's a fantastic point that was made there, correlating again, kind of relationship building is what I would call it. Next on the list was demonstrating their appreciation by saying positive or flattering things. Now, what this is like, GOTS. Mike would tell you that GOTS is almost more important than the scripts themselves, being able to get on people's side, because it's rapport building. Getting on people's side, it's rapport building. And it says demonstrate their appreciation by saying positive or flattering things. We're not really looking just to say flattering things. We're looking for ways to find sincere, genuine compliments about some of the topics and things that they're going through. And it's a great exercise. There's a lot of ways that we can do it, but this is almost more important because rapport building, again, if people like you, they're going to want to do business with you. Flattering things, apparently it still works, probably works more in the dating world, but we like to look for sincere, genuine reasons and things to be able to compliment people throughout the meeting. Nothing that's surface level, but there's opportunities when you pay attention to be able to give that sincere, genuine appreciation when you're in those meetings. And I promise you, these things, when you pay attention to them when you're in a meeting, they make a big difference in likability and rapport building with people, and building real rapport, not I fish, you fish, those types of things. Next was using the word you. So using you rather than me, talking about yourself, me. One of the areas where we always say the only way you really want the only place that we want to talk about ourselves when we're going through the scripts and the situations is in story. So we use story when we talk about ourselves, when we're talking about situation, and those are the only instances and areas where we talk about ourselves. Other than that, it should be talking about them. You're not trying to come off braggadocious, and that holds true when it comes to working with prospects too as well. Things that they don't like. They do not like qualifying language. So what are we talking about there? Qualifying language. Maybe, might, things where you're giving yourself an out on both ends, or you're not being real specific is what it is. That's the problem with qualifying language. And they found that people that aren't specific come off less trustworthy, so less concise. And so when we're using specific language versus qualifying language, you come off coming more believable compared to people that are using qualifying language. I find this even working with advisors myself, and just in general, being specific and concise brings clarity into a meeting, and clarity brings some trust. If we're not clear, that makes a situation that can build confusion and not having trust. So I think that these are all spot on when it comes to relationship building, whether it's obviously dating, and that's why we use that with regular relationships in financial advisory, because so many of those things are on point. So next things here. So how to get people to say yes. So psychologists have found people are much more likely to say yes to a new idea if it's presented to them a little bit at a time. If the suggestion is shoved at them all at once, they're likely to reject it. And so that's, in the 5Q system, that's why we don't go for the shoulders right away on people. It's building the case little by little by little, and changing their belief and helping them help understand. If we go right away, and say, hey, your advisor's screwing you, it's a boil the frog mentality. They're going to reject that. Why? Because they love their advisor. They know them. They don't know you. And going for the shoulders immediately with that guy, it's never going to work. You have to build it piece by piece, bit by bit. Otherwise, that's why you get the rejection. That's kind of the whole basis of the 5Q system, is taking time, going piece by piece, bit by bit, getting people to say yes a little bit at a time. That's how you get people to say yes. If you go, if you go right for the shoulders immediately, that's you've probably seen it. And a lot of times, you'll look at, as advisors, that can be a little bit tough, because you're a smart guy. You've been doing it for a long time. You know how to solve the problem. We want to go from point A to point B as quickly as possible. And the problem with that is we have to go bit by bit and take the client along with us, because part of the time they don't understand a lot of the things that we do. Clients are sophisticated. They know a lot of details, but there's a lot of items that we want to build on, and we'll talk about that more as we kind of go through the presentation here. So, in this article here, this guy had a niece. She asked for $1 10 times over a 4-day period, and eventually ended up getting $10. So she was asking for $1 a day over a period of time. He kept saying, okay, here's $1. It's no big deal. And said, I would have hung up on her from the nearest lamppost if she had asked for 10 up front. So essentially, if she would have just asked me for the $10, I would have said no. But piece by piece, little by little, the little girl was asking her aunt for $1, and she got her $10 and got to buy what she wants. So that's kind of the example. It's kind of funny when you do it bit by bit, you end up getting what you want there. So that ties into the one-way presentation, right? So we have you look at this concept in many of the things that we do. So we could jump in, and I've seen this a lot of times. I've had the one-way presentation. We have all the items that we go over, their rate of return. We know what all the potential problems could be. And I've seen people, when they go through their presentations and when they don't go bit by bit through that with folks, rejection comes, and they'll say something, well, fixed index annuity doesn't have enough return in it. Well, if they're telling us that, then we went too fast. We didn't build the basis for why it is that this is the right return for them. If they're going through and saying, well, yeah, this sounds really good, but there's not enough liquidity there, we went for the jugular too quickly, right? And so in the one-way presentation, just like they were talking about, questions is a big part of it. That's part of the learning process that we're taking people through bit by bit. And the one-way presentation, you can get through it in 30 minutes, 45 minutes there, and there's a pile of questions in there. And you could do something like this very quickly, but again, bit by bit, building on it, getting small yeses throughout the presentation. That's how you're able to change a client's mind and have them come to the conclusion that this is the right fit. And then we're handling all those areas that we already know are hang-ups when it comes to a presentation. We're handling them up front. I would rather handle these items up front. If I know that rate of return can be an option or be a problem for people, I like to have the client be able to buy in and say, yeah, this isn't the highest rate of return out there. It's not the lowest, but it's the one that fits me best. So when we walk through rate of return on there, we're going through and they're learning, and we're having them agree and tell us why this is the best fit for them. Going through, we're getting that buy-in so that rate of return isn't an issue. We're getting this tell us yes, one question at a time as we go through that. We get into liquidity. This isn't, we ask them, hey, would there be enough liquidity in this to, buy a car if you needed? Yeah, okay, all right. If you had some repairs with to your house, if you had to pay the deductible on your roof, would this be enough liquidity? So when it comes to liquidity, is this more or less liquid than your money manager, right? Using that comparison, and we have them tell. So as we walk through that, then we don't have any objections. But when we go through and we use that process, I'll tell you, maybe it's been a little long. Sometimes when you get a little bit long, and this is where getting on people's side is important. So when you're asking questions, you respond back to it. But I'll tell you, anybody that I've had over the years that have used this process and have used the one-way presentation to present FIAs and a new concept to prospects and clients, people say yes to it because the science behind it is building and getting yeses bit by bit as they're going through. So thinking fast and slow, Daniel Kahneman. We all know this guy, right? So he is basically the godfather of behavioral economics, and he's a lot of his findings and everything he put is obviously in the 5Q system. And one of the things that he had found that was kind of interesting is that rationale. Some of the smartest, you have intelligent people, salt of the earth people, just regular, just intelligent thinking people. When it comes to their own finances, these CEOs, whoever it is, when it comes to their own finances, rationale goes out the door. We become emotional beings. And when you're making financial decisions, when it comes to your own situation, rationale is what we want to have. But what he found was it's actually the exact opposite. And that's where a lot of the strategy that's put in to the 21-point checklist and the 5Q system comes into play, is based off of his findings. And so what we think of typically is, Mr. Spock here, Mr. Rational. This is how we think we are making smart decisions. But exactly like I said, what we found is it's the exact opposite. And so one of the examples I would give on that is you could have a CEO who's smart, runs a company, he's great, he looks at the numbers. He's not worried about, he's a businessman that makes smart business decisions and with other people's money. And he does that day in, day out. And he meets with you, Mr. Advisor, and says, hey, you know what? You helped me with a lot of the business making decisions for our company. This is fantastic. I've taken your advice, and this is good, sound, rational advice and good numbers. All the numbers, everything's right here. I want to have you come work with me, at home on my money. And then you go home, and guess what happens? That's all out the door, because now they're dealing with their own money. Rationale leaves the room, and emotional takes over, which is why we understand that people buy emotionally and not rationally, which is why just pulling out spreadsheets and the numbers doesn't do things, because there's an emotional component on it. And there's kind of an interesting little deal on this here, actually, kind of proving the point. So they did a test. They did like a split test and asked people, if you're going to get some ice cream, you can buy, you can go ahead and get the 90% fat-free ice cream, or you can get 10% fat. Now, it's kind of a ridiculous question because those are the exact same thing. 90% fat-free, 10% fat. It's exactly the same exact thing. However, almost everybody chooses the 90% fat-free. This is just another example, irrationality. It's the exact same thing. It doesn't matter. But my point on this is framing is really everything. And that's kind of the point of what it is that we're doing. When we go through and you take the time questions, bit by bit, yes, getting the yeses as we go, framing is really everything when it comes to the presentations and everything that we do. When we're setting up and we take the time that we go through when we do the one-way presentation, or really the 21-point checklist for that matter, we're framing the entire conversation up, and whether we like it or not, there's framing going on either way. Either we're framing our questions, or how we're going through, or the client's going to frame things back to us. So it's much better to handle everything in advance when we're framing it, when we're handling a topic, whether it's liquidity, whether it's return, whether it's long-term care. It's better for you to bring those items up rather than having the client do it, because you get to set it and frame it in the way that you want to have it framed rather than having to take it the way the client does. But this is a lot of the reason why we kind of talk the way that we do. I use some qualifying language, kind of. This is the way that why we talk the way that we do when we go through our scripts in the meetings and everything that we do there. And you could look at, the 21-point checklist, really, and we could use titling for an example here. And titling, the last 20% of the conversation is all that we need. Why did he not have you fill out these 2 forms here? Why didn't he fill those 2 things out? Well, he wanted to make money off me while I'm dead, or when I'm dead, and then want to do it to my kids. That's what we're getting them. That's the whole point of the entire titling conversation, that we want to have them say that. But the entire 80% of that entire presentation is there setting things up, asking the questions, and taking the time so that the client can understand thoroughly and have them telling us why, telling us and painting the picture and the story in their mind so it's lasting for them. And that's why we use stories so many times when we go through, because the story helps paint the picture in their mind. And then we're taking that bit by bit, yes by yes, and it's all about framing things. So then we get to that last 20% and they understand it, then they can answer the question the way that it's meant to be answered. And we're building the basis for that conversation. And so that's why we take the time. And some of those conversations, they're 10 minutes long. You could probably do it and just cut to the chase. But like we said, it's a bit by bit, and it's the S's on there. So, excuse me. Investors have a lot of odd biases, and we can talk a little bit about how we handle those in the 5Q system. So, one of them is inertia. So what's inertia? So inertia is, it's kind of like, it's a little bit like procrastination, but inertia is, just not wanting to do anything. I would actually argue that inertia is probably our biggest obstacle when it comes to sales in general. A lot of times people think, well, hey, it's the advisor, it's the other advisor that's in the way, or things like that. But what it is it's being able to find the hot button. You got to have a hot button. So it's got to be a big enough deal to be able to get them to get off the couch. How do I motivate them? It's lack of motivation is really what it is. Building lack of motivation. And I'll tell you, going in there and saying, hey, I can get you better return. I've seen plenty of people. Hey, if we could go in, if it was just about getting people to say, hey, we could get them better return, then everybody would sell in a lot more. There's a million ways that you can position or show something where something's better. It works sometimes. I get that. But, they could also say, hey, you know what? I'm eating at the restaurants I want to eat at. I'm playing the golf that I want to play. I've done pretty good so far. I could be screwing things up. Maybe I better just wait. When they're sitting on the couch of inertia, how do we get them to get off the couch of inertia and move forward? What's going to be a big enough deal? Oh, you can save me a little bit. You can save me some money on taxes. Well, I don't know. I've been working it with it this way for the last 10 years and things have gone pretty fine. Maybe I need to think about that a little bit. So when they're sitting on the couch of inertia, you can try and coax them up by giving them some snacks or some food, some drink, whatever it is. How do we handle inertia in the 5Q system? There's a lot of things out there that don't necessarily make people move. I can tell you one way that we could do that. If I want to get someone up off the couch, I could light the couch on fire. They're going to get up off the couch then. So how do we do that in the 5Q system? If they find out that, when you're going through the system, if they find out that their advisor is screwing them purposely, is their motivation? They believe that. They told us that. Now, do they have motivation? So there's an emotional. I don't like. I can pay more money on my car insurance. Sometimes I don't because it's a pain to go do it. But if I found out he was ripping me off, you find out someone's ripping you off or they're doing you harm. Now it's about principle. And I'm going to move forward then. I'm going to move forward quickly. That's the hottest of hot buttons that you can have. Procrastination. Yeah, I mean, that's a big one too as well. Hey, this is pretty good. I like this, but I'm going to think about it. Or let's revisit it when I get when I get back from vacation, right? Just procrastinate. So many people do this so many places in their lives. We all do this. It's one of the biggest killers of productivity. But procrastination, again, how do we deal with that? We light the couch on fire. Again, if they believe that their advisor's not looking out, more than not looking out for their best interest, purposely doing that, you're not going to say, hey, yeah, I know I'm getting screwed over here right now, but I'm going to go on vacation first and I'll take care of it. No, they're going to take care of that right away. I've seen this many, many times where people are like, we're moving it immediately. I don't even care what we're moving it to. I just don't want to be with that particular person. Anchoring. So like the anchoring effect, that's I'll see this one where all of a sudden, someone will be talking with someone about FIAs and they'll be like, yeah, the market's down a little bit. I think I need to have some safety in my portfolio, but I want to see it bump up a little bit more and then I'll lock in. And so the guys are, what do I do there? Or, I want to get a little bit more return in here. How do we handle that? We go through, we have the one-way presentation, 21-point checklist. When they discover that the one-way, it's good in good markets, it's good in flat markets, it's good in poor markets. There's never a bad time to get into it. It's better in all those markets. That's why we set that up so that we can avoid anchoring. If you run into those situations, feel free to chat with me, guys. I can help you. Framing. So client, we frame. We were just talking about that. We frame. Clients frame too as well. Clients will they'll go ahead and and that's why we want to get in and when we do our presentations, that's why we address all the items in advance because we want to be framing the questions in the manner that we do it rather than the client. So that's why that's pretty important there. Heuristic. So I would say that's kind of around, hey, Dave, Dave Ramsey, he says this. This is why he says to do this. Default choices. So, the endorsement effect. That's our Dave Ramsey here. Dave Ramsey says, I need to do this, that, or the other. And so we take them through the 21-point checklist and we have the client tell us rather than us, attacking the hero. That's why we have the client telling us why these things make sense, why that they need to move forward, why that there's issues with their titling, all of those items there. So I think it's just kind of interesting here going through a lot of these biases and how the 21-point checklist can handle and takes care of all these biases that we run into with clients in the field. When we actually put it into action, there's a lot of those problems that if we handle those up front, we take care of them. The 21-point checklist in the process is going to handle those things. And it takes away a lot of the pain that you have. People, we want to go to the quickest way possible. Hey, they just want to have their problem solved. And then we wonder why they don't move forward because clients have these biases. They have these issues and these problems. So kind of a funny thing here, the ultimatum game. Play the ultimatum game with me here a little bit. So this was kind of a game or a study that we tapped into. I thought this was kind of funny here. And there's it's different how the results go on this based on where you're from. So if you're from North America, Western country, it's kind of how they think about things versus people in maybe more of a third world country. So here's how the ultimatum game works. So the ultimatum game, how it works is, so you got $100, the first player gets it, and then they get to give whatever they want to the second player, okay? So you get it. First player gets $100, and they get to give the second player whatever amount that they want to give them. Here's the catch. So the second player can accept or reject the offer. Okay? What do you think happens if the second player rejects the offer? If the second player rejects the offer, they both lose the money. So they both lose the money. So if you're the first player here, you have to be thinking, I need to make, well, actually, I don't want to give away the story here, but so in the U.S., it's almost always a 50-50 split. So if the first player tries to stiff the second player will reject the offer just to punish the first player. So if the second player rejects it, no one gets anything, right? So if I go to, I got the $100 and I say, hey, I'm going to keep 75, and in the U.S. and I offer the other guy 25, he's going to say, well, that dude ripped me off. That's not even fair. So I'm going to punish him by rejecting it, so neither of us get anything. And so that kind of just tells you how a lot of folks are in the United States when it comes to fees and being fair. So fairness in fees, we're okay with fees, but we just want them to be fair. And it's much like that when we go through the 21-point checklist. We don't say that fees are fair. We don't ignore fees when we're going through the one-way presentation, or we say, hey, here's what they are. Are they fair? When we're in the 21-point checklist, we don't say that, hey, it's bad that you're paying a fee in your money management. We just walk through and have the client tell us whether or not they're fair. But it's interesting because that's a very interesting point based on, you look here, they're willing to reject taking anything, which truthfully, it's kind of funny because if you look at other countries, South America or Africa, some of the poorer countries here, second player is happy to get anything and thinks it's ridiculous to punish the first player for being lucky. So down in South America, or Africa, they would offer, they'd have $100, keep 99 and offer $1, and they would accept that based on the fact that they say, hey, you know what? I'm not worried about that. That's not a big deal. I'm $1 richer than I was prior. So just the difference between how those work and what's important, and it's about fairness, right? And in the U.S., people don't care about paying fees. It's all about, is it fair? And if they believe that it was fair. So this is kind of an interesting point here. So when it comes to fear of loss or the excitement of gain, so fear of loss on the left there, or the excitement of gain, which one is more powerful? Which one is more powerful? The fear of loss, two different emotions, or the excitement of gain? Well, it turns out that the fear of loss is more powerful by 2-1 than the excitement of gain. So, it's interesting. It's such a powerful point. We'll get into it here. How about taking a little bit further? How about when people are retired? When they actually are retired, that emotion, how does that change when they get into retirement? By what percentage, I wonder? So it's actually 5-1. 5-1. It goes up, the fear of loss, into versus when they're not retired. Fear of loss versus the enticement of gain. It's kind of interesting to think about that because so many people, their thought process is gain, gain, gain. And this is even with advisors too as well. Even if people have as much money as they would need in retirement, and the math shows people have far more fear of loss than gain, yet we continue to push return. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So there was kind of another interesting point here too as well. So they took retirees and said, hey, you have an opportunity to be able to win $100, okay? And here's how the game is going to go. But so 50% of retirees would refuse to gamble with, here's how the game goes. You're going to flip a coin, and you're going to flip this coin. Flipping a coin is 50-50 chance, right? It's not even every time. If anyone's played roulette, it goes on runs, but eventually, mathematically, it's a 50-50 chance. And so if you guess right, so you flip a coin, and if you guess right, 50-50 chance, you win $100. If you guess wrong, you're going to lose $10. So it's 10-to-1 odds, and it's a 50-50 chance on this, weighted 10 times. So economically, it would make sense 100% all day long to choose to go ahead and do this. Yet most retirees, because of the opportunity to lose, they don't want to take this chance. It makes absolutely no sense, because on a 10-to-1 odds at 50-50, you're going to destroy it. But most retirees would not be willing to take this gamble. And yet we look at it here. So we look at it. What are most advisors that are out there all pushing, and what is the main topic when they're talking about? Heck, I even see it with guys with FIAs still, rather than highlighting and putting the emphasis on safety, they are still putting their attention towards the return side of things. But and when people get into retirement, why are they so concerned with risk when they get into retirement? They want to be able to continue their lifestyles. And yet, as advisors, we're all continuing, not all, 5Q advisors that are trained to understand taking care of and talking about risk. We had so many people, it's always return, but that's not actually what clients want. That's not what they want. And so the emphasis, what should our emphasis be on when we're talking with people and we're going through it? Clients already have enough money, exactly. They have enough money to retire. So if they have enough to live the life that they want to live, they already have enough for that. The only thing that can put them in a problem is if they lose money. And so that's why we spend the time, initially with clients. Well, I'll kind of move on to my next point here. So why do we take so long before we reveal our products? When we go through, we don't go right away on the one way and talk about why that this is a fixed index annuity. Why do we take time to go through that? Well, the reason why we take so much time is because we're building a case. When clients come in initially, what are they all thinking that they want? They're all thinking that they want return. Even though the fear of loss is so much harder, we've just been so trained that we look in return. And so we take the time to walk through the one-way presentation or any of the presentation we go through there to help bring the client up to speed and to have them tell us, yeah, you know what? When I go through and they tell us that they do have a concern of loss, and we walk through and then they find out when we go through sequence of returns with them, and then they discover, yeah, you know what? Fear of loss is actually a problem. So I do need something that takes care of those. We want to walk through and have the client. That's what we're doing, is we're taking time to have them really discover what it is that they want, because the initial thought process is I want return, but we take the time to walk through. What we find out is fear of loss is much stronger for them than it actually is to be able to get that return. And then once they tell us, yeah, not losing money is important for me. This has enough liquidity for me. And they describe back to us an FIA, because that's what they're doing. They're describing, and we tell them, hey, I've had people that have had clients that have said, I don't want a fixed index annuity, never want one, when they came off of a seminar. And then by the time they walk through the presentation, they're saying, yeah, I want that thing. I want exactly what that is. And they say, hey, that's only one problem. I can't give it to you. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? Well, everything you described when we went through that presentation that you wanted, that's a fixed index annuity. Then they're like, oh, no, I absolutely do want this. I didn't have quite that understanding. I actually do want this. And then we tell them what the product is once they've actually established what it is that they want. So, and that's why we have them tell us why the product works for them. We don't tell them. We have them tell us it's got enough liquidity. It's not the highest return, but it's the right return. And we have them tell us that this is the right fit for them. and we're using comparison too. So how we're wired the whole time we go through these presentations, really in everything and anything that we do, we're always doing a side by side because human beings are wired for side by side comparison. We go through, I mean, if you look at it in in any successful sales cycle, or you go to the eye doctor and you go through and they're checking your vision, and then they're checking glasses. They don't just hand you one pair. They're kind of clicking through, checking the different viewing capabilities. Say, hey, does this work? Okay, now does this one work? They're kind of going side by side on that because our brains are wired to be able to look at things and make decisions when we do side by side. And that's why when we're in the presentation, we're always going through, hey, FIA, money management. When it comes to growth, which one's better for you? When it comes to liquidity, which one's better for you? When it comes to long-term care, VA or whatever it is. And we do that side by side because that's effective when it comes to being able to help someone make a decision, is doing that side by side. And that's why we have it all built into the 5Q system. And then the other thing is jargon. So staying away from, what's jargon? Jargon is complicated, specific words that professionals use. Doctors can do it. Financials, advisors can do it. We want to stay away from that kind of thing. We want to be able to be specific, and we want to speak clearly where our clients can understand, because jargon is just something, in my opinion, that people use to be able to impress people. But when you're trying to bring someone on your side, or especially when you're in the sales world, jargon is gonna kill that sales process. And it goes with numbers too as well. Having things and laying things out are clear and concise for people so they can understand. And that's why, we use stories when we're talking too as well, because stories are understandable. And they talk about stories. Why do we use stories as well? They say pictures paint 1,000 words, right? And people remember stories. Emotions are tied to stories. And when we're going through those stories, what we're doing is we're having the clients paint a mental picture in their head so that they can remember it when we get down to the end of the conversation with them, right? And so words versus stories. So here we are on the left, fear versus word, painting the picture. That's what I'm talking about here. On the left, which one, comparison, which one paints a better picture of a more convincing picture of fear? We got the picture versus the words. What paints the picture mentally for greed? Left or the right? Picture versus the words. When it comes to keeping someone's family safe, picture or the words? We want to paint that picture inside of our prospect's mind, and that's where stories do that. The pain of losing money. So when we're doing presentations, this is why our presentations, we want to build visual stories. We want to paint that picture inside of our client's mind to help make it real, help them remember it, help them be able to answer those questions. And that's why we use comparison. So comparison is one of the most powerful tools to be able to help people move forward and make that decision. And why we put the graphics and the pictures in there. That's why we take baby steps. We put baby steps in all those presentations, taken step by step, helping the client say yes, so they can be able to make those decisions. There's stories side by side, the comparisons, the baby steps, all of those things. I know we could get through things a lot quicker, but these are the scientific tools that are built into the process to be able to help clients move forward. And so, the more we master the topics, the more we master the system, and we have the understanding. I've had people that have done it and then they've come back and done other things and realize, yeah, you know what, I'm running into these problems. All of these items are put into the system so that we can win the sale the first time, knowing exactly how our prospects' minds work. And then questions. That's why we have so many questions inside of our system, so we can have the client tell us, so they can talk to us. And when the client says it, we know it's true. If we just talk to the client and we tell them all these things, They might believe us. They might not. They may have a totally different idea on things. You can read your client's mind by asking them questions. We do all this instead of, just throwing numbers at them, hypotheticals, facts and figures, math. When you go in there and you want to prove everything to clients, you can't prove anything to anybody. They have to believe it. And we just talked about, are clients rational thinking when it comes to their own money, or are they emotional thinkers? This is why we just can't go in and prove to everybody, hey, by the numbers, here's what it is, because they're not thinking rationally and by the numbers when you're talking about your own money. You're thinking emotionally about decisions. So we want to tap into the emotional side and speak to the emotional side of things when it comes to money. That's how we're going to be able to and proof doesn't work. It doesn't matter. We can have all the proof in the world, but if someone's not thinking rational about the situation, we've all had arguments with people. You can have all the proof in the world, doesn't matter what it is. When someone's emotional about a situation, it doesn't matter. We see this, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle that you're on, whether you're, a conservative or a Republican or a Democrat. Everybody has their proof, and a topic that people are emotional about, bringing rationale to the situation. This goes the same thing with money, like Dr. Kahneman said, is that rationale goes out the door. And so that's why we use the 21-point checklist system to be able to tap into that emotional side. So it's not about proving. 5Q is not about proving. There's you could use some stuff in there about proving things, but what is it really about? It's about changing their belief. It's not about, hey, the fees, I just proved to you that your fees were much higher. It's about them coming to the conclusion of why their fees are so much higher. Because of my advisor. He did it specifically. And that's how we create the white, or he didn't care about my family, or didn't care about my grandkids. All of those points are to get to in the framing is get them to a point of assigning blame for why these things weren't done. Because if it's just the things that need to be fixed, they can go fix them. They can go back, ask their advisor to apologize, and he can fix them. But if there's a problem, a character flaw, that's something that you can't fix. So we have to know how people are, we have to know what people believe, and we need to know how they think. And by asking questions and going through this is how we were able to change the beliefs of those prospects when we're working with them. So every script, every presentation, every piece of 5Q software has all of this stuff built into it. That's why it takes the time, why we do that. It's not to, make things drag on longer, but all those skills, all of those items that we talked about, the biases that clients have, all that stuff's built into the 5Q system for you so that you can tackle all of those issues and problems. And we're always looking at these items too as well and looking to update things as well. So now it's all it is it's your turn to dabble in, or not dabble in, but to jump in with 2 feet and understand, hey, are some of these issues and things that I've had, my sales process that I go through, where are the problems I have? If you're having some problems with, getting people leave an advisor, or any of the things I was talking about in there, just got to jump in, understand, the science is built in here, and we're here to help you guys have more success and to help you guys have a great year. So I hope this helped reactivate, refresh some of the things, get back in, dig into the 5Q system, and go make it a great 2025. Help your clients be that white knight advisor and speak to the side of things that clients want to be spoken to. But have a great week. I've had a good time spending some time with you guys. I hope this was helpful. And, if you need anything, I'm happy to, we'll be reaching out. We got lots of good things cooking, and have a great rest of your week. Okay, guys? Thank you so much. and thank you for being part of the 5Q team.